A medical billing company looks like it just types numbers into a computer all day. Submit a claim, wait for a check, and the process should be that simple. But that quiet office is running one of healthcare's most misunderstood profit engines. Most people assume a doctor's office simply bills the insurance company directly, themselves. Send the paperwork, wait for payment, and the money should arrive without much trouble. That explanation feels reasonable, since insurance claims look like straightforward forms. Fill in the visit details, the diagnosis, the treatment, and submit it electronically. It would make sense if that simple submission was the entire billing process. A doctor sees a patient, writes down what happened, and sends the bill along. But insurance claims are rejected constantly, for reasons most patients never even see. A single wrong code, a missing detail, or unclear wording can sink an entire claim. Most small medical practices have no one trained to catch those exact mistakes. That is where an entire industry quietly built itself around fixing this problem. Medical billing companies exist specifically to stand between the doctor and the insurer. They do not treat patients, and they do not sell any medical product at all. Their entire business is translating a doctor's work into language insurance will actually pay. That translation, it turns out, is worth far more than most people ever realize. Most billing companies do not charge a flat fee for their work, not up front. Instead, they take a percentage of whatever money they successfully collect for a doctor. That percentage typically lands somewhere between 4 and 9% of total collections. It sounds small, until you realize how much money moves through a busy medical practice. A single practice can generate millions of dollars in insurance claims every single year. Even a modest percentage of that total adds up to a serious recurring income stream. This model also aligns incentives in a way flat fees simply do not accomplish. If the billing company does not collect, the billing company does not get paid either. That pressure pushes them to chase every dollar a flat fee arrangement might ignore. Doctors like this structure too, since it feels like a shared risk, not a fixed cost. No collections, no bill, at least on paper, is an easy pitch to a new client. But the billing company controls something the doctor rarely has time to monitor closely. They control the entire follow-up process on every single claim that gets denied. A percentage model rewards persistence. Chasing partial payments most doctors would let go. That persistence is exactly where a lot of the real profit quietly gets generated. Multiply a small percentage across dozens of client practices, and the math changes fast. A billing company serving 50 small practices can out-earn many of those practices combined. None of that requires treating a single patient or owning any medical equipment at all. It requires understanding exactly how insurance companies decide what they will and will not pay. That knowledge is the actual product being sold, dressed up as administrative support. The percentage fee is just the pricing mechanism wrapped around that specialized knowledge. Everything else in this business exists to protect and grow that one recurring percentage. Every single medical procedure and diagnosis has to be translated into a specific code. Those codes determine exactly how much an insurance company will pay for that visit. Two nearly identical visits can be billed completely differently, depending on the code chosen. A slightly more specific, better documented code can mean a noticeably higher payment. A vague or overly general code often gets paid at the lowest possible rate available. Most doctors are trained in medicine, not in the fine print of insurance coding rules. That gap is exactly where a skilled medical biller earns their entire salary repeatedly. Certified coders study these rules constantly, since insurance requirements shift every single year. A biller who knows the current rules can recover revenue a doctor would otherwise lose. This is not about billing for services that never happened. That would be straightforward fraud. It is about accurately capturing the full complexity of care that actually was provided. Undercoding is shockingly common, and it quietly costs practices real money every single week. A visit that involved extra complexity often gets billed as a routine, simple appointment instead. Correcting that gap alone can meaningfully raise a practice's total collections without changing care. Billing companies market this coding expertise as one of their core, defining services. It is a skill set most small practices simply cannot justify hiring for internally, full-time. One trained coder working across 50 practices is far more efficient than 50 solo hires. That efficiency is a big part of why billing companies exist at meaningful scale at all. Coding accuracy directly determines revenue, which directly determines the billing company's own percentage. Their financial incentive and the doctor's financial incentive point in exactly the same direction. Here, That alignment is a genuinely important part of why this business model actually works. Get the coding right, and everyone downstream, doctor and biller both, gets paid correctly. Insurance companies reject a significant share of medical claims on the very first submission. Some estimates put initial denial rates above 10% across the entire industry. A denied claim is not necessarily a lost claim. It is usually just the start of a process. Billing companies specialize in figuring out exactly why a specific claim got rejected. Sometimes it is a simple clerical error, a wrong date, a missing digit, easily fixed. Sometimes it requires a formal appeal, with additional documentation and a written explanation. Most solo doctors do not have the time to fight every single one of these denials. Many simply write off the denied amount and quietly move on to the next patient. A billing company treats that same denied claim as unfinished, recoverable revenue instead. They resubmit, they appeal, and they track every claim until it is fully resolved, one way or another. This persistence recovers money that would otherwise simply disappear from a practice's income. It also directly benefits the billing company, since their fee is tied to what actually gets collected. A claim recovered after appeal is worth exactly as much as one that never got denied. That means denial management is not a side task. It is one of the most valuable parts of the job. Some billing companies build entire specialized teams focused only on chasing denied claims. Those teams learn the specific denial patterns of specific insurance companies over time. Knowing which insurer denies which type of claim helps prevent the same mistake twice. That accumulated knowledge becomes a genuine competitive advantage over less experienced competitors. A new billing company starting from scratch has to learn all of this the hard way. An established one already knows exactly where the friction points usually show up. That experience is quietly one of the hardest things for a new competitor to copy fast. Denial management alone can be the difference between an average biller and a great one. Insurance rarely covers the entire cost of a medical visit, even with good coverage. There is almost always a remaining balance the patient themselves is responsible for paying. Collecting that patient portion is a completely different challenge than billing an insurance company. Patients are individuals, often confused by their bill, and sometimes simply unable to pay quickly. Billing companies typically handle this entire secondary collection process for a doctor as well. They send statements, reminders, and payment plan options on the practice's behalf. That work is unglamorous, but it directly affects how much total revenue actually comes in. A practice can bill perfectly and still lose money if patient balances never get collected. Some billing companies charge an additional fee specifically for this patient collection service. Others fold it into the same overall percentage they already charge for insurance billing. Either way, it is another layer of revenue built on top of the core billing relationship. Patient communication also requires a softer touch than a strictly clinical insurance claim does. Billers have to explain confusing medical bills clearly, without sounding aggressive or threatening. That balance between firm collection and patient goodwill takes real skill to manage well. A practice with a poor collection process quietly loses money on nearly every single visit. That loss often stays invisible, buried inside a spreadsheet nobody has time to fully audit. Billing companies make that invisible leak visible, then plug it, one statement at a time. For a doctor already stretched thin, outsourcing that headache alone can be worth the fee. It is one more reason billing companies feel indispensable once a practice starts using one. Undoing that relationship means rebuilding an entire collections process again, from scratch. That switching cost quietly protects the billing company's client relationships for years at a time. Patient collections is not flashy, but it is a real, durable slice of the total revenue picture. Before a doctor can even bill an insurance company, they have to formally join its network. That process is called credentialing, and it is slower and more tedious than most people expect. Every insurance company requires its own separate application, documentation, and verification process. A single doctor might need to be credentialed with a dozen or more insurers individually. Each application can take weeks or months to process, with its own separate paperwork trail. Miss a detail, and the entire application can bounce back, restarting much of the timeline. Many billing companies offer credentialing as a completely separate service, billed on its own. It is often priced per application, or as a flat fee for a new doctor's full enrollment. This creates an entirely different revenue stream, disconnected from the ongoing collections percentage. A new practice opening its doors needs this service immediately, before it can bill anyone at all. That urgency makes credentialing a strong entry point for landing a brand new client relationship. Once a billing company handles credentialing, they already know that practice's entire insurance landscape. That existing relationship makes it a natural, easy next step to also handle ongoing billing. Credentialing becomes a quiet funnel feeding the much larger, more valuable billing relationship. Doctors switching practices or adding new insurance networks need this service again and again. That recurring need makes credentialing a steady source of smaller, standalone project revenue. It is less glamorous than the main billing service, but it rarely goes away entirely. Every new insurance plan, every provider change, restarts at least part of this process. Billing companies that master credentialing efficiently can turn around applications faster than most doctors could alone. That speed becomes a genuine selling point, especially for practices eager to start billing quickly. It is a smaller piece of the business, but a consistently necessary one, year after year. Nobody bills insurance without it, which makes it a quiet, reliable foothold into new accounts. Underneath all of this sits a layer of software most patients never think about at all. Claims do not travel directly from a doctor's office to an insurance company, not usually. They pass through a technical middleman called a clearinghouse, which checks and routes each claim. Billing companies often build or license their own software connected to these clearinghouses directly. That software flags obvious errors before a claim ever reaches the insurance company at all. Catching a mistake before submission is far cheaper than fixing a denial after the fact. Some billing companies charge a separate technology or platform fee on top of their percentage. Others fold the software cost quietly into the same overall service price a client pays. Either way, the software itself has become a genuine product, not just internal infrastructure. Dashboards now show doctors exactly how much is pending, denied, or successfully collected in real time. That visibility builds trust, and trust is what keeps a practice from shopping around elsewhere. Some billing companies have even started licensing their software directly to other smaller competitors. That turns a piece of internal tooling into an entirely separate revenue stream of its own. The technology layer also creates a real barrier for brand new competitors trying to enter the market. Building reliable claims software from scratch takes serious time, money, and specialized expertise. That barrier protects established billing companies from being easily undercut by a cheaper newcomer. Automation has also reduced how many human hours it takes to process a routine claim. Fewer hours per claim means a billing company can profitably serve far more clients at scale. That efficiency directly widens the margin between what a client pays and what it costs to deliver. The office may look like people simply typing at computers, but the software is doing real work. It quietly filters, checks, and routes thousands of claims long before a human ever reviews one. The technology is not the story people notice, but it has quietly become the business's real backbone. A billing company serving one small practice barely breaks even most of the time. The entire business model only really works once a company serves many practices at once. Fixed costs, software, trained staff, compliance systems get spread across every single client served. Serving 50 practices costs far less per practice than serving 5 practices separately would. That is the same logic behind almost every scalable service business, not unique to healthcare billing. A larger billing company can also afford to specialize its staff by insurance company or by specialty. One team might focus entirely on a single major insurer's specific rules and quirks. Another might specialize in a specific medical field, like cardiology or physical therapy billing. That specialization makes each team faster and more accurate than a generalist working alone. Smaller competitors without that scale often cannot afford this level of specialized staffing at all. Larger billing companies also negotiate better rates on the software and clearinghouse tools they rely on. Buying power at scale quietly lowers costs in ways a small local competitor simply cannot match. This is why the medical billing industry has consolidated significantly over the past several years. Smaller, independent billing companies increasingly get acquired by larger, more efficient regional players. The acquiring company keeps the existing client relationships while stripping out duplicate overhead costs. That consolidation trend usually raises margins for the surviving company, without raising prices to clients much. For a doctor, none of this consolidation is usually visible in day-to-day service. The billing company they have used for years might quietly be owned by a much bigger parent now. Scale is the quiet engine behind an industry that otherwise looks fragmented and mostly invisible. It is why a handful of large players increasingly dominate a market built on many small clients. None of that scale story ever shows up on a single line of a doctor's invoice. But it is exactly why this unglamorous back-office business has become genuinely quietly profitable. This entire business depends on one quiet assumption, that insurance companies process claims consistently. In recent years, several major insurers have started using their own automated claim review systems. Some of these systems are designed specifically to flag and deny claims faster than before. That shift has made the denial and appeal cycle billing companies rely on noticeably more difficult. An automated denial can arrive within minutes, with far less detail than a human reviewer would give. That vagueness makes it harder for a biller to know exactly what needs to be fixed. Some billing companies report denial rates climbing by more than 20% in recent years. That extra labor cost quietly eats into the same percentage margin the entire business depends on. Regulatory requirements have also grown more complex, adding new compliance steps almost every year. Keeping up with those changes requires ongoing training that smaller billing companies struggle to afford. Meanwhile, some larger medical practices have started building their own in-house billing teams instead. Modern software has made basic billing more accessible than it used to be, even for smaller staff. That trend threatens the smallest billing companies first, the ones with the thinnest specialization. Larger billing companies with deeper coding expertise remain harder to replace with simple in-house software. Competition is also increasing from software-only platforms that promise billing without a human middleman. Those platforms are often cheaper up front, though they still struggle with complex denial situations. Stubborn, unusual denial still tends to need a real, experienced person to actually resolve it. That is currently the strongest argument for why human-led billing companies have not been fully replaced. But that argument gets tested a little more every year, as automation keeps improving steadily. Pricing pressure has also increased, as more billing companies compete for the same limited client base. Some practices now negotiate lower percentage rates than billing companies charged just a few years ago. That pressure squeezes margins, even as the actual workload per claim keeps getting more complex. Data privacy regulations add another layer of cost, requiring strict security around patient information. A serious data breach can be catastrophic, both financially and reputationally. For a billing company, none of these pressures are fatal to the business on their own, taken individually. But together, they are quietly raising the bar for what it takes to stay profitable long-term. The billing companies adapting fastest are investing heavily in their own automation and software tools. Others are narrowing their focus, specializing deeply in a single medical field instead of staying general. The unglamorous back-office job is slowly becoming more technical and more competitive at the same time. Staying ahead now requires treating this like a technology business, not just an administrative service. So here is the real model, stripped down to what actually makes a medical billing company profitable. It was never simply about typing claim details into a form and waiting for payment. It is about a percentage tied to results, and every incentive built to protect that number. Coding expertise recovers revenue most doctors do not even realize they are quietly losing every week. Denial management turns rejected claims into recovered income most solo practices would simply write off. Patient collections plugs a second, quieter leak most billing conversations never even mention. Credentialing opens the door to new clients, long before the main billing relationship even begins. Software and clearinghouse technology quietly does most of the heavy lifting behind the scenes. Scale ties all of it together, spreading fixed costs across dozens of practices at once. None of these pieces work particularly well in isolation. They compound across every single client. That is why an office that looks like quiet paperwork is actually running a sophisticated operation. The claim was never really the product being sold from the very first client onward. The product was expertise, persistence, and a system built to chase every recoverable dollar. Automated insurer systems and rising competition are starting to test how long that edge holds. The billing companies that survive that shift will be the ones that keep specializing deeper. Everyone else sees a quiet office full of people typing numbers into a screen, nothing more. The person who built the company sees a carefully tuned system chasing thousands of small recoveries. That is the gap between an ordinary back office and a genuinely sophisticated service business. Next time you get a confusing medical bill, think about who is actually working that claim. Somewhere behind it is a person, or a system, fighting to recover every dollar owed. That fight, not the paperwork itself, is what quietly makes this business worth running. The claim form was never the product. The persistence behind it always was.